And if I can impact even just one survivor's life, or, one program to get the right tools into the hands of people that we need to, and the way that we're handling these cases within the military and the DoD, and hopefully even on the civilian side, and the way that we handle civilian assault and rape cases. Of course, military and civilian, we have different rules, but that is my goal. That is my passion, is to just make that impact on other people's lives and help them find their way back like I have, and live a fulfilled life, but to create that change within these programs, and make sure that we're handling this in a ecological way, and a way that isn't protecting people that are behaving badly or behaving in a certain way from, being held accountable for their actions.
Awesome. So I want to take it one layer deeper here, and I'm going to make a lot of prefaces now, because I think as we take this one layer deeper, it gets a little uncomfortable also for me, because the topic becomes very personal, right? So just now we talked about these systemic structures and everything. So if something transpires, if an incident happens like that, how is it being handled? Are the systems that we have in place, are they just and right? And are they getting to the truth of the matter? And are they serving justice or not? And as you described in your case, there was some, corruption essentially, because there was just lots of conflicts of interest within that system. So once we fix that kind of external system that handles any incidents that occur, that's still kind of only half the topic we're talking about here, because the incident occurring in the first place, that is the real problem at the end. I mean, it's like we can say, oh, somebody got raped and it was handled properly, perfect, but that didn't prevent the rape, right? So we still have that going on, and that's where, from my perspective, with the experiences I've made, and with all of my own insecurities around this topic, which can be a very touchy topic, right? There's just this spectrum of blurriness, also because of what the social life and flirting and dating and sexual preferences and all of that, what it's like, and all the just the worlds collide in that whole spectrum. And it's like you said, it shouldn't be so hard for someone to keep their hands to themselves. And obviously I'm like right with that. You talk about all these different things, I'm like, doesn't the person somehow make choices and realize at some point that their choices don't make sense? But then at the same time, from the totally benign experiences I've made in my life, I see that for some people, making choices in these emotionally charged situations seems to be difficult, right? Because like if you talk about, making choices in relationships and all of that, that's where the clash always happens, right? So now we're talking about the dark side of that, and it's not two people choosing to have a relationship, it is two people not choosing to have a relationship, but something happened there, right? So, I'm like sufficiently confused right now, and this is the very topic here at the core, right? Not at the systemic, like, oh, we can be all proper, right, and we can have stuff in place, but now at the actual messy, emotional, human level. And wow, I don't know, what can you say about that? Is that, I don't even have a question. I just want to hear your perspective.
No, that's a really good question. And, of course I can give you all this, the in-depth in the mind of NLP coming from the NLP perspective, right? Like why people do and say and behave the way that they do, because it's on an unconscious level, and it's from the environments that we grow up in. It's from the filters that are placed on us from our parents and from young childhood. That's where everything happens, is 0 to 7 years, which are our imprint years. And this isn't my parents were like this, so this is why I ended up this way. Not even close. Now, when I say an environment, yes, like it's impossible to not take on how our parents are, because that's what was passed down from them to their generation, and then so on and so on, which is why we actually call NLP a generational cycle breaker. Because when you're able to change the way that the mind works, meaning the way that we see things, NLP is about perspective. For me, it's tough, because I know the pain and the hurt and the anguish and the shame and the, all the stuff that I've talked about, and being on the side of being violated like that from somebody else, and having to look at that person and not just think that they're a vile human being or a monster, or they're just, totally effed up, right? That's the human natural response to a situation that I took away as a massive emotional traumatic situation, and had a very negative outlook on it because of the circumstances. Bottom line is hurt people. And that's what we have to say, okay, again, that's why I do the work that I do, because there are so many people out there that are, I don't care where you came from, who you are, you could have the best, so to speak, background that you think you come from. All of us have stuff that we've been through that shape us into who we are being every single day. And, when we're giving people the tools to say, okay, they're making these decisions for what reason? What is the purpose of behaving a certain way? And that's hard, because in this circumstance, yeah, it's like, why in the world would anyone ever assault anyone else, whether it's physical assault or rape or sexual assault, or, someone that's a child molester, or just, horrid things, right? You think about these people as like the scum of the earth. That, like I said, that's our natural human response. And for me, now that I've become an NLP, and I'm actually a master practitioner now, I've gone on to do my master course, and I don't have those feelings tied to that anymore. I don't have the hate for him. I don't want to kill him and all the people involved like I used to. Like, that was literally the emotions I had. I'm like, I hate all these people, because it was consuming me. And when I was able to say, okay, I get to decide how this is going to affect my life. Now, as far as creating the change of where we get people to stop doing this, that's such a, it's a tough question. It's a loaded question, because it's like, well, it's not impossible by any means, but people are going to do and say what they want to say, and they do, right? They're going to make those choices until they figure it out in life, until they, like where it came for me, where I was just so sick and tired of being weighed down and feeling all the anger and the negative emotions going on. You say enough is enough, or you just keep living. Some people live that way forever, and that's how they die. They live with all those things that they've done, and the regret and the hurt that they've caused other people, and they don't heal from it. And that's unfortunate to say, because it's like, well, that's kind of the backbone of how do we get people to change and stop assaulting other people. Yes, there's all kinds of programs that we can do. There's, like, I know in the military, okay, for example, the minute I joined, basic training, it's like, there was a PowerPoint slide, and you have to sit there and don't assault each other, don't touch each other inappropriately. And it sounds ridiculous. I'm like, this is stuff that we learn in kindergarten, literally. But here we are as adults being briefed on why we should not be touching each other inappropriately, or why you should not touch anybody else without each other's consent. And yet we still have a problem following directions. And then you have alcohol involved, or you have, a situation where maybe, yeah, they are dating and they think it's okay because they're dating, or whatever, right? There's so many different scenarios that play into a sexual assault or a rape, or, harassment, any of those kinds of things. And it's tough, because it's like, well, there isn't really an answer for that. There isn't a right or a wrong way. It's just to instill in people, what is the cost of this on your life? What is going to be the cost? Let's say that you put yourself in that situation, and you make a decision that's not the best, obviously not even close to the best. Let's take it from the perpetrator standpoint, right? Like, this person goes and they end up assaulting or raping somebody, and maybe they're held accountable, maybe they're not, but I'm sure that person has to live with that for the rest of their life. I would hope that they have, a conscience, or they have I'm assuming, because most people are like me and you and everyone, we all have things that we regret that we've done, or we have things where we're like, what the hell was I thinking? Why did I make that decision? Why did I do this? That, of course, is on a a pretty extreme level, right? But I would hope that they would be able to look back and be like, wow, where in the world, how did I, what led me to this point, and want to change that. Because in my healing process, I've also learned a lot of gratitude and a lot of kindness and a lot of forgiveness, not only for myself, but for other people. Because I realized, like, I've made really stupid decisions, and I'm sure I've hurt people. Yeah, I haven't raped anybody, or I haven't, assaulted anybody, but I've done things that I look back and I'm like, I'm not proud of that. But that's just a learning experience. And it's hard, it's hard to say that, because some people are like, how could you say that about an assault or a rape? It's because I've gone through a massive amount of healing, and I have lived the better part of my adult life, and even from childhood, being an angry, pissed off, miserable person. And yeah, I was, happy and carefree at certain points, but this stuff weighed me down. It almost consumed me to the point of my life ending. And that's not living. And you have to get to that point where you have to just, you have to be the best that you can be. And I think if every person on this planet had those tools, if every person realizes that they have those tools within them, and that they, are striving to be the best version of themselves, think about all the things that would be eliminated. The way, think about wars that were fought over, people being pissed off at each other, right? Or one wrong thing is said, and then, yeah, catastrophic. So yeah, I don't really have a direct answer for what you're asking, because it's human nature. We cannot, like, we can't make anyone do anything they don't want to do. But at the same time, okay, so it's like, how do we stop people from murdering people? That's horrid. You took someone else's life, and we can't, because people are responsible. We are 100% responsible for our behaviors and our actions. We are 100% accountable, which is why, again, I'm here and I do the work that I do, because I'm like, okay, if we have that power over ourselves, then think about the ripple effect it'll have on the people around us. So yes, you may not be able to change and stop people from doing and behaving and saying the things that they're doing, but if we're able to have the power of the outcome on the side where I'm at now, which is, okay, we're able to heal from the things that have happened. People are incredibly resilient. People are incredibly powerful. We all have our own gifts that we bring to this world. And if we are taught and given the tools and able to see that within us, instead of living in those, because again, it goes back to, like I said, hurt people. The people that are out here doing this, they obviously have massive amounts of hurt and pain in their life that they would go inflict that on someone else. And I'm sure, I would hope, they didn't go out with the intention of doing it. They're in the heat of the moment, and not to say they don't have any control, because they do. They control themselves, but they chose to make a horrid decision. They chose to behave in a way that they behaved. And my hope is for them to heal as well, so that they don't continue to hurt the people around them. And it sucks, because it's like, okay, yeah, we can sit here and brief all day long. How are we going to change it? Well, that's like saying we're able to control people and get rid of free will, So it's a great question. I'm glad you asked that, because I haven't really been asked on that level. And the best that we can do is just, teach people to, I know I've been in other situations where, yeah, it didn't end up in assault or rape, but even myself, I didn't have the courage to, and I don't want to, like, I don't think men are all these aggressive, predators out there. I don't believe that by any means. But I think that being a woman too, at some points, I've been in situations that were kind of scary, where I'm, feeling pressured into something, and I am like, whoa, wait a second, this is not, I don't feel comfortable. And even in those situations where I've kind of like laughed it off, or tried to, like, kind of downplay it, and it's taught me to stand in my power and to be more cautious. And I hate to say that, because yeah, why should I have to go out and be cautious of anything? But it's just being aware of who I'm surrounding myself with, and who I'm being. I get to choose who I want to be. And yeah, it's not going to prevent everything from happening. I mean, this is the world we live in. Anything can happen at any time. But I have to live my life in a way that has meaning and purpose, and that I get to decide who I get to be and what am I going to take away from that. And that's the healing, massive amounts of power and transformation that I've had from my assault to get me to where I'm at today, where I don't have to live in that place of just complete, there is no really way to describe it except just like this total darkness. I mean, you feel like no one understands you. You feel like you're in a hole. I mean, that's the best analogy that I can really give, because that's how it is. You feel like you are stuck in a forever dark place, and that no one understands where you're at. No one will understand you. You feel like people are judging you, and all these things. And that's the other takeaway that I give to other victims and assault survivors and people who've been through this, is that I'm here for them. And I welcome men, women, whoever. I've had all kinds of people reach out to me, and I'm like, I'm always there to talk to somebody, and to listen to them if they've never been able to share their story. But I think the more that people become aware of their behaviors is probably the best answer I can give you. The more that we are aware of who we're being, the better chance we have at changing the things in our society that we do find very uncomfortable and very, like the low of the low, and, things that people choose to do. And like I said, the, murders and rapists and child molesters and people robbing people, and, just the crimes that they're out committing. If we're aware of our behavior and the person we're being, then those things are gonna, we're gonna start seeing those things be diminished, or even get to a point. I mean, that would be nice, right, to not have any of that stuff, but to give people the power to change their life.
Wow, really, really deep, really deep. It's
I know, I went really
unpacked a lot
deep there.
yeah. And I love it too, especially all the things you touched on, and it gets highly philosophical at the end too, about free will and the human nature and the structures of our society, and what's possible for human potential and all of that, and what kind of world we can possibly build. And or if not, is it futile? I don't know. I don't know. But right. I would hope we can make those changes and be brave and speak out and be the change we want to see in the world. And yeah. And it's very interesting too. A lot of times when you were speaking here, what I thought about is how it is the perception, right? I mean, not wanting to downplay anything or here, but you yourself said it was almost worse to feel the betrayal from your team than the actual assault itself, right? And so that those emotional things that are just an entirely internal perception, right? There's nothing measurable about it from the outside. We can maybe check some symptoms like, oh, you seem kind of sad today, but we can't actually find out what it's like inside you, that experience and all of that. And so, right. And I think that's where things like NLP and all of that are powerful tools as well. Poorly understood tools, but powerful tools, I think, to, tap into the neurological and psychological aspects and all of that too.
Right.
Yet at the same time, you also, that's something I always struggle with, as you're doing these things, right, to make yourself feel better, there's a risk of just like spiritual bypassing. And I mean, you can't just totally avoid the things that happen. Mm-hmm. Reality still somehow exists. And yeah.
Well, and that's why that's a big part of it. It's like, that's why people don't understand, we see negative emotions as this, again, it's like the elephant in the room. It's like, anything that we perceive as bad or that in our mind is uncomfortable. It's like, whoa, I don't want to go anywhere near that. And that is why people live years and years and years with all this pain in their body, whether for me, it was manifesting as physical pains, because I was holding so much emotional baggage and trauma in my soul and in my body that it started affecting me physically. Like, yeah, I'd had the injuries physically happen, but it was prolonging it and making it worse because I was holding on to so much physical or emotional pain from years and years and years of trauma and years of significant emotional events. And people don't understand that when repressing our feelings and emotions is catastrophic to our bodies, because we all know what stress does to our body physically, right? I mean, the physical ailments of carrying stress and when we're stressed out and how we feel and how it affects us. So imagine the best thing that I love that I've heard, a couple places shared, more than a couple, I'm sure, but the story about a teacher, professor, psychologist, whoever, holding a glass of water, and it's half full, and she says, how many of you think the glass is half full? Okay, how many is half empty, whatever. And then she says, this is just a glass of water that I'm holding. That's all it is, right? But it's interesting how people see that from their perception.
Exactly.
It's all about perception. And then she goes further to talk about, now imagine I'm holding this for 5 seconds. Okay, not too bad. Now imagine I'm holding it for 5 minutes. Your arm's getting kind of tired, and she goes on further and further to describe, okay, now I'm holding it an hour. Now it's 2 hours. Your arm is, it's exhausting, and your muscles get weak, and you're like, I don't care how fit or strong you are, eventually you're going to have to drop your arm, right? And it's going to, yeah. So imagine that is you, and that's your stuff in life that you're holding on to and you're carrying around because it's uncomfortable for you to talk about, or it's too painful to address. Whether it's, like I said, I don't care who you are, everyone has stuff that they have been through that has created and added to the person that we are, and it's our perceptions. So if you're carrying around that for me, it was like 24 years when I released stuff through NLP, through timeline therapy, and through hypnosis. And I actually had a physiological reaction when I came out of hypnosis to where the room started spinning, and I felt like I was going to throw up because I had released so much anger that I was like carrying all that crap in my body. And I was like, what? And the next day in our class, because this is a 10-day, very invasive, NLP practitioner course. So it's like all day, every day for 10 days straight. And I came back in, I had no tailbone pain, and was blown away by what I had physically been carrying in my body, but how much lighter I felt when I released that. And that's what happens when we repress our emotions. We repress that stuff. It's being brought up for a reason. Our unconscious mind is designed to bring up anything that's unresolved in our bodies. And so people are like, oh, well, I drink, people that drink or do drugs, or they just hold it all in and they don't want to talk about it. It doesn't matter what way you're using to escape that pain or that problem that you don't want to face or talk about or deal with. It's going to affect you sooner or later. And that's, if we, the biggest takeaway that I had from NLP and from going through and becoming a coach, not only was the release from all the trauma that I'd been through and all the things that I had, put myself in, and it's hard to say this because I know there's going to be people that were like, she just said that, but I put myself in a victim mentality, meaning I constantly was put in positions that I continued to be the victim. And that only means that I was putting myself in situations that I shouldn't have been in. And that doesn't mean necessarily, when I first heard that from my mentor about my assault, I was like, what do you mean I would ever attract to be raped or assaulted? How could it? And he was like, that's not what I'm saying. Listen again to what was being said. I was attracting those people into my life because I had unresolved trauma and unresolved and unhealed things on the unconscious level that I had told myself I wasn't worthy. I didn't have self-love. Now, those people, they chose to do what they chose to do, right? So they have to own their behavior. I don't own that. I don't own the person who assaulted me. I don't own the person that raped me. I don't own their behaviors because that's them. They have to own that and their actions. But I own my role in it, in that I didn't have self-love. I didn't have self-worth. I wanted so badly to be loved that I allowed treatment from people that, had I had the love and the worth that I now have, I would have been like, nope, this person doesn't align with who I'm trying to be. And it's not a good or bad thing. It's just hey, nice to meet you, but you know, there's no relationship here, or there's no friendship here, or there's no anything here because it's not aligned with who I'm being. And I wouldn't attract those unhealed parts in someone else because of the stuff that I was dealing with. And we don't realize that. We don't realize on our unconscious level, like, oh, I'm this good, because that was my thing. I'm not a victim. I'm a good person. I'm out, I do all these things and I volunteer and I work hard and I treat people with kindness and I love people and all that stuff. But underneath, I was a mess. Underneath, in my unconscious level, I didn't love myself. I didn't have self-worth. And that was from stuff that happened years and years and years ago. And again, it's not about, there is no good or bad. It's just what we take away from that event. So for me to go back and clear that up and be like, wow, what I thought at that time is not at all what I think now. And it's interesting when you can go back and look at something and be like, why, even something very minuscule that seemed like a huge deal at the time, to go back and be like, why was I so upset about this? And it's something else, right? Or it's not even, maybe it's the perspective of like, wow, I can, like with my assault, I can go back and be like, you know what? That was a very, it was a traumatic event and it was very upsetting, but I don't have to own that person's behavior. And I know that even in the things like even me lashing out and me being angry and like taking it out on the people around me, I felt bad about that because I'm like, they didn't deserve that from me. And they didn't know, granted, they didn't know what was going on, but I was choosing to be that person because I let my assault affect me on that level. I let it take complete control of my life. And now I can be like, I don't need to beat myself up. Like, yes, I own that and I take my part in it, but now I get to live my life and say, but look how much I've grown. Look how much I've changed. Look at the person I've become now, because that's what that taught me. That's the learning that I took away from those experiences. I turned them into, now I get to be the person that I get to be. And it doesn't take a magic wand and wave like, okay, now my life is perfect. But now it gives you that opportunity to say, okay, it just is what it is. And I can take away a different viewpoint from that. And it helped me become a better person because I saw the things that I didn't like and I worked on them. And now I get to decide who I get to be every single day when I wake up.
That's quite amazing. Really taking one of the most horrific events I can think of and turning it around into ultimately, like you said, a learning experience and a positive quote unquote experience, right? That's quite paradox, but wow. And I'm really impressed too how I really feel like we got to like the core here as well of this. We talked about these systemic changes that might need to happen in some systems and all of that. But at the end of the day, exactly, everything that you just talked about that I can barely recap here. But yeah, it to me feels like that's the core, that perspective and that, yeah, what it means to have your experience as a human, and it only exists because you interpret it as an experience. So, wow.
Thank you. Yeah,
Man.
I'm glad that it resonates with you.
Well, this was really good. I hope a lot of people have watched this far and are really getting the same value out of this and the insight and the interesting story and perspectives. And yeah, it's as much as it's difficult to like you said, who wants to talk about that? It's very difficult. But I think as we go down, as we go deep, as we dig into those things, we do come back up, empowered and stronger and wiser and able to make a positive impact in the world.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, like I said, we have to think of ourselves that we evolve. I love the way that the thing I'm about to say too, because my mentor tells me this and he reminds me even when because I'm like, I'm a coach and I just went through a really upsetting relationship within the last year and it was heartbreaking for me and a lot of things kind of came from it. And he had to remind me, he said, Meghann, just because you're a coach, like, yes, you have the tools, so you're more aware, but you are still a human having a earthly experience and we evolve in an upward spiral. So when we heal at one point in our life and we start to evolve like upward, right? Say at somewhere else, something pops up and we're like, what the heck? I thought I healed from this. Why is something similar popping up? Well, that just means that there's more room to grow and there's more room to heal. And that just, sometimes some of for me, my core wound is what we like to say, is trauma. It was trauma. I mean, I look back even at childhood events where I had a lot of death. I lost a lot of friends in very, traumatic situations, and car accidents and motorcycle accidents and cancer, and just from a very young age all the way up. I'm like, wow. I mean, my mom took me out for my birthday 2 weeks ago, and she even told me I was born during the middle of a tornado and a tornado warning and stuff. And my dad fainted, and I'm like, okay, so the minute I got here, it was kind of chaos,
Yeah.
And I kind of laughed because I thought it was hilarious, and I'm like, that makes a lot of sense, but we're able to, for me, you got to have a sense of humor too, because it's like, okay, that totally applies, because it's like, now I get to, every time something comes up, I just realize, like, okay, I thought I healed. Maybe there's more work to do, and that's why this is being brought up. And not only do you have to be aware and hold yourself accountable, which is, you have to get really real with yourself and parts that we don't like about ourselves. And we just realize you have to welcome those in, because those are parts of us that are also along with the parts that we do like about ourselves. And that's how we align into the person we want to be, is by accepting all those parts of us. And realizing, like, we are doing the best that we can with the resources that we have, and to be gentle, because we've never been here before. Every single moment in life is a place where we've never been before. And I used to be, I'm one of those people who would just beat myself up for making any kind of mistake. And like, like I said, even through the last 2 years that I've been a coach, like, I've healed so much, and I've learned so much, but I'm like, I'm a human being. I am imperfect, and it just makes me work harder every day. It's like, okay, how can I better myself? If I'm focusing on me, if every person is focusing on them, meaning themselves, again, we go back to the ripple effect. Imagine that effect it's going to have on everyone around us, because we are so focused on being our highest version of us, or our best version of us, and how we see ourselves in that moment.
Love it. Love it.
Thank you.
This is perfect. I really feel like we've covered a lot of good topics, and leaving this challenging topic off on a high note here of unlocking human potential.
Thank you.
Really thank you for your perspective. It was a pleasure talking to you and hearing all of this insightful wisdom, and empathizing with what you've gone through, and also seeing how you've grown from it, and seeing how you have helped make a difference in the world. Very inspiring. Thank you so much, Meghann.
Yes, thank you, Oliver. I really appreciate it. It's been an honor to be here.
If somebody wants to get in touch with you, I'll go ahead and link your Facebook profile up there.
Perfect. Yep. Facebook, same as Instagram, the same as Facebook, but on my Facebook has all my handles of everything. So yeah.
Excellent. Awesome. That's perfect. Thanks again, Meghann, and have a good one.
You too. Bye.